Before the Mafia Boss knew her name, his mother already knew her heart. In the quiet streets of Brooklyn, where small cafes opened before sunrise and ordinary people carried stories nobody noticed, Olivia Bennett started her day the same way she always did. She unlocked the doors of the little corner cafe, turned on the warm lights, and prepared for another morning of serving strangers who would come and go without ever knowing the person behind the counter. Olivia was a curvy black woman who had learned that the world often made quick judgments before taking the time to understand someone. Some people saw her appearance before they saw her kindness. Some noticed her differences before they noticed her character. But Olivia had never allowed other people's opinions to decide her worth. She knew who she was. She was someone who believed small acts of kindness could change a person's entire day. That belief was tested on a cold Monday morning when an elderly woman quietly entered the cafe. The woman looked tired, carrying a simple handbag and wearing a coat that had clearly seen many seasons. Most customers walked past her without paying attention. They were too busy with their phones, their schedules, and their own problems. But Olivia noticed. She saw the hesitation in the woman's eyes as she looked at the menu. She saw how carefully the woman counted the money in her hand. Without making the moment uncomfortable, Olivia walked over with a gentle smile. "Take your time," she said. "There is no rush here." The woman looked surprised. She was used to people being impatient. She was used to being treated like someone who needed to move out of the way. But Olivia treated her like she mattered. They talked for a few minutes. Olivia learned that the woman had been walking through the neighborhood and simply needed a quiet place to rest. Olivia brought her a warm drink and a small breakfast, refusing to let the woman worry about the cost. "You do not have to do that," the woman said softly. Olivia smiled. "Sometimes people just need someone to care." The woman looked at her carefully, as if those words meant more than Olivia realized. What Olivia did not know was that this elderly woman was not just another customer. Her name was Eleanor Whitmore, the mother of one of the most powerful men in New York. Adrian Whitmore was known throughout the city as a man who built an empire through discipline, intelligence, and absolute control. The Mafia Boss had influence that reached far beyond ordinary business conversations. People respected him. People watched their words around him. But very few people truly knew him, and fewer still knew the woman who raised him. Eleanor had spent years surrounded by people who treated her differently because of her son's name. Some wanted favors. Some wanted approval. Some only saw her connection to power. But Olivia saw an elderly woman who needed kindness. Nothing more. Nothing less. That simple moment stayed with Eleanor long after she left the cafe. She returned home that afternoon carrying a feeling she had almost forgotten. Being treated like a person instead of a powerful man's mother. The next morning, four black vehicles quietly stopped outside Olivia's cafe. Four men in tailored suits stepped inside, causing every customer to turn and stare. Olivia froze for a moment, wondering why people connected to someone as powerful as Adrian Whitmore had come looking for her. But then one of the men lowered his head respectfully and said, "Miss Bennett, we have been looking for you." And in that moment, Olivia realized the woman she helped was someone the entire city knew. But she still had no idea why the Mafia Boss's four bodyguards had come to find her. The moment four men in tailored suits stepped into Olivia Bennett's cafe, the entire room changed. The morning conversations became quieter. Customers looked up from their tables, wondering why people connected to someone as powerful as Adrian Whitmore had arrived at such a small neighborhood cafe. Olivia stood behind the counter, still holding the coffee cup she had been preparing, trying to understand what was happening. She had spent her entire life staying away from attention. She was used to being overlooked, not searched for. The four bodyguards looked serious, but their expressions were not threatening. Instead, there was something unexpected in their behavior. They showed respect. "Miss Bennett," one of them said calmly, "we are here because Mrs. Whitmore asked us to find you." Olivia immediately recognized the name. Eleanor Whitmore, the elderly woman from the cafe. The woman she had helped simply because she needed kindness. Olivia looked surprised. "Is she okay?" she asked. The concern in her voice was genuine, and the bodyguards noticed it. They had met countless people who reacted differently when they learned about the Whitmore family. Some became nervous. Some became overly polite. Some immediately wondered what they could gain. But Olivia's first question was about Eleanor's well-being. That told them everything they needed to know. "She is doing well," the bodyguard replied. "She wanted to thank you personally." Olivia felt uncertain. She had not done anything extraordinary. She had simply offered a warm drink, a meal, and a few minutes of conversation. She did not understand why someone would send 4 people to find her because of that. Later that morning, Olivia followed the bodyguards to a private residence outside the city. As the car moved through the quiet streets, she wondered what kind of world she was entering. She had spent her life working in a cafe, helping customers, and building a simple life. Now she was being invited into the world of Adrian Whitmore, a man whose name carried influence throughout New York. When Olivia arrived, she was greeted by Eleanor with the same warmth she had shown in the cafe. The older woman smiled and immediately reached for her hand. "I hoped I would see you again," Eleanor said. Olivia smiled softly. "I was just making sure you had a good morning." Eleanor looked at her with appreciation. "Do you know how rare it is for someone to do something kind without expecting anything in return?" Olivia did not know how to answer. She had never thought of herself as special. She simply believed people deserved compassion. Before Olivia left, Eleanor asked her to stay for tea. During their conversation, she shared something Olivia did not expect. She explained that many people approached her because of her son's position. They saw the Whitmore name before they saw the person. But Olivia had treated her like any other woman who needed a moment of care. Meanwhile, across the city, Adrian Whitmore received a report from his bodyguards. He listened carefully as they explained what they had discovered about the cafe girl his mother wanted to thank. He expected to hear that she was ambitious or that she wanted something from his family. Instead, he heard something completely different. She had refused any reward. She had asked only if his mother was all right. Adrian sat quietly because that answer challenged everything he believed about people. His entire life had taught him to question intentions. But this woman had shown kindness when nobody was watching. For the first time in a long time, the Mafia Boss became curious about someone who had no interest in his power. And the next decision he made would bring him face to face with the one person who saw his family not as powerful figures, but simply as human beings. Adrian Whitmore had spent years learning one simple rule: never trust what people show you at first glance. In his world, every smile could hide a reason, every compliment could carry an expectation, and every person who approached his family usually wanted something in return. That mindset had protected him for years. But now, sitting in his quiet office overlooking the Manhattan skyline, he found himself thinking about a woman who had done the opposite of everything he expected. Olivia Bennett had walked into his mother's life without knowing her identity, without knowing her influence, and without knowing the power behind the Whitmore name. She had simply seen an elderly woman who needed kindness. That detail stayed in Adrian's mind because it was something he rarely experienced. Most people treated his family differently the moment they discovered who they were. Olivia had treated his mother like a person before she knew anything else. That was why Adrian decided to meet her himself. The next afternoon, he visited the cafe where Olivia worked. He did not arrive with a large group of people or create a scene. He wanted to see the place where everything had started. The small tables, the warm lights, and the quiet atmosphere felt completely different from the world he knew. When Olivia saw him enter, she immediately recognized him. She had seen his name in the news and understood the reputation connected to it. But instead of acting nervous or trying to impress him, she simply greeted him the same way she greeted everyone else. "Welcome. What can I get for you?" Adrian paused because the question surprised him. People usually changed their behavior around him. Olivia did not. "Coffee," he replied. "Black." Olivia smiled slightly. "That sounds exactly like what I expected." For a moment, Adrian looked confused. "And what did you expect?" Someone who has spent so much time being serious that they forgot to enjoy simple things. The answer caught him off guard. It was not disrespectful. It was honest. Adrian sat at a table near the window and watched Olivia interact with other customers. She remembered names, listened to stories, and treated everyone with the same patience. There was no performance, no attempt to appear important. She simply cared. When the cafe became quieter, Adrian finally asked the question that had been on his mind. "Why did you help my mother?" Olivia looked surprised. "Because she needed help. You knew nothing about her." "That was the point," Olivia replied. "If I only helped people who could do something for me, then it would not really be kindness." The room became quiet. Adrian had heard many impressive speeches in his life, but those simple words affected him more than he expected. He realized Olivia was not trying to teach him a lesson. She was simply living by a belief she had carried for years. Before leaving, Adrian thanked her. Olivia nodded and returned to her work, as if the meeting was not a major event. But for Adrian, it was different. As he walked back to his car, he kept thinking about one thing. The woman everyone might overlook had something many powerful people around him lacked. She had peace with who she was. And for the first time in years, the Mafia Boss wondered if true strength came not from controlling the world around him, but from understanding the people within it. Adrian Whitmore left Olivia Bennett's cafe with a feeling he could not easily explain. It was not admiration in the way people usually admired him. It was not curiosity because of her appearance or her simple life. It was something much deeper. For the first time in years, Adrian had met someone who treated him exactly the same as everyone else. She did not see the powerful name. She did not see the influence, the reputation, or the image people had created around him. She saw a person, and that was something Adrian had almost forgotten was possible. In the days that followed, he found himself thinking about the conversation more often than he expected. He remembered Olivia's words, not because they were complicated, but because they were simple. Kindness meant more when nobody was watching. Those words stayed with him because his entire life had been built around people watching. Every decision, every appearance, and every interaction had been carefully considered. But Olivia had reminded him that the moments nobody saw often revealed the most about someone's character. Meanwhile, Olivia returned to her normal routine at the cafe. She did not expect anything to happen after meeting Adrian. She did not believe she had done something extraordinary. To her, helping Eleanor Whitmore had been the natural thing to do. A person needed help, and she helped. That was all. But Adrian's mother saw something different. Eleanor understood that Olivia's kindness was rare because it was not connected to opportunity. She had met many people who wanted to be close to the Whitmore family because of their influence. Olivia was different because she had no idea who Eleanor was when she offered her compassion. One afternoon, Eleanor invited Olivia to visit her home again. During their conversation, she shared stories about Adrian's childhood. She explained that he had always been responsible, always determined, and always focused on protecting the people around him. But somewhere along the way, he learned to hide his emotions behind success and control. "My son has spent so much time making sure everyone believes he is strong," Eleanor said softly. "Sometimes I wonder if he remembers that he is allowed to be human too." Olivia listened carefully because she understood something about Adrian that many people missed. His confidence was real, but so were the walls he had built around himself. Later that evening, Adrian visited his mother and found Olivia there. For a moment, he was surprised. The woman who had challenged his perspective was sitting comfortably with the one person he cared about most. But instead of feeling uncomfortable, he felt something unexpected. He felt grateful. Eleanor smiled when she saw his reaction. "Your father once told me that power reveals who people are," she said. "But I think kindness reveals even more." Adrian looked at Olivia, remembering the way she had treated his mother before knowing her identity. He realized that Olivia had shown his family something they rarely experienced: genuine care without expectation. As the evening continued, Adrian and Olivia spoke more openly than before. He asked about her dreams, her goals, and the life she wanted to build. Olivia was surprised because most people asked questions about what she could offer, not about what she hoped for herself. Their conversation was different. There was no pressure, no hidden reason, just two people learning about each other. When Adrian left that night, he looked back at the house and understood something important. Olivia Bennett was not changing his life because she had power over him. She was changing it because she reminded him of something more valuable than power itself. She reminded him that the strongest people were not always the ones who controlled everything around them. Sometimes, they were the ones who could still care when the world gave them every reason not to. The days after Adrian Whitmore's visit to his mother's home felt different from anything he had experienced before. For most of his life, Adrian had surrounded himself with people who respected his position, but very few people who understood him. He had built a world where everything had a purpose, every conversation had a reason, and every relationship required careful attention. But Olivia Bennett had entered that world without trying to become part of it. She did not chase his attention. She did not ask for opportunities. She simply remained the same person she had always been. That was what made her impossible for Adrian to ignore. He began visiting the cafe more often, sometimes without any official reason. At first, Olivia thought it was unusual. A man like Adrian Whitmore did not seem like someone who would spend time in a small neighborhood cafe. But she slowly realized he was not there because of the coffee. He was there because it was one of the few places where he could exist without expectations. One morning, Adrian sat near the window while Olivia prepared drinks for customers. He watched how she treated everyone with the same patience and respect. She remembered small details about people's lives. She listened when someone needed a conversation. She created a feeling of comfort in a place that was ordinary but meaningful. Adrian had spent years surrounded by expensive buildings and impressive rooms. Yet this simple cafe showed him something he had been missing. "How do you do it?" Adrian asked. Olivia looked up. "Do what?" "Make people feel like they matter." Olivia smiled gently. "I think people usually know when they are being treated like they are invisible. I just do not want anyone around me to feel that way." Adrian became quiet because those words reminded him of something. He realized that many people in his world were not invisible because they lacked importance. They became invisible because everyone was too focused on status and influence. Later that week, Adrian invited Olivia to attend a small family gathering with his mother. He wanted her to see that his world was not only about business and reputation. He also wanted his family to understand why Eleanor valued this woman so much. When Olivia arrived, she immediately noticed the difference between the people around Adrian and the people at the cafe. The environment was elegant, but the conversations felt more careful. Everyone measured their words. Everyone understood the importance of the Whitmore name. During dinner, someone asked Olivia how she knew Adrian. Before she could answer, Adrian calmly responded, "She is someone who reminded me that people should be valued before their position." The table became quiet. Olivia looked at him because she knew that statement represented a major change. The old Adrian would have focused on explaining his choices through reputation or advantage. This Adrian was speaking from genuine appreciation. After dinner, Eleanor watched them from across the room with a small smile. She knew her son was changing, not because someone forced him to, but because someone showed him a different way to see the world. Meanwhile, Olivia began realizing something about herself too. She had always believed her simple life made her different from people like Adrian. But she was starting to understand that kindness, confidence, and compassion were not small things. They were qualities that could influence even the most powerful people. As Adrian walked her outside that evening, he thanked her for everything she had done for his mother. Olivia shook her head and said she had only done what anyone should do. Adrian smiled because that answer was exactly why she was different. She never saw kindness as something impressive. She saw it as something natural. And for Adrian Whitmore, that simple belief was becoming one of the most valuable lessons he had ever learned. As the weeks passed, Adrian Whitmore began to understand that the greatest changes in life often happened quietly. There was no single moment when everything became different. There was no dramatic announcement or sudden transformation. Instead, change appeared in small choices, small conversations, and small moments when he decided to see the world differently. The man who once believed everything could be measured by influence and success was beginning to recognize the value of things that could not be bought. Olivia Bennett noticed those changes because she had always paid attention to details others ignored. She saw how Adrian listened more carefully during conversations. She saw how he treated people who had nothing to offer him. She saw how he no longer needed every room to remind him of his importance. One afternoon, Adrian invited Olivia to visit a community program supported by his family. He wanted her to see a different side of his world, one that was not defined by reputation. As they walked through the building, Olivia noticed something unexpected. The people there did not respond to Adrian with fear or hesitation. They greeted him with genuine appreciation because of the support he had provided. For the first time, Olivia saw that Adrian's influence could create positive change when it was guided by compassion. "You have helped a lot of people," Olivia said. Adrian looked thoughtful. "I used to think helping people was about providing solutions. Now I think it is about understanding what people truly need." Olivia smiled because that answer showed how much he had grown. He was no longer focused only on fixing problems. He was learning to understand people. Later, they sat outside and watched the city move around them. Adrian admitted something he had never shared openly. He said that for years, he believed his value came from being respected by others. He thought if people saw him as strong, he would never be vulnerable. But Olivia had shown him that strength was not about hiding every weakness. You know what changed everything? Adrian asked. Olivia looked at him. What? You never looked at me like I was someone above you. Olivia smiled softly. Because I never believed anyone was above anyone else. Those words stayed with him. Adrian realized that Olivia had never tried to challenge his position. She had simply refused to let his position define him. Meanwhile, Olivia began experiencing changes in her own life. For years, she had been comfortable staying in the background. She focused on helping others and rarely accepted attention for herself. But Adrian encouraged her to recognize her own abilities. He reminded her that her kindness, intelligence, and confidence were not ordinary qualities. They were strengths. One evening, Eleanor Whitmore joined them for dinner. She watched her son and Olivia talking and smiled because she understood what was happening. They were not changing each other by force. They were bringing out qualities that had always existed within them. Eleanor shared something she had learned throughout her life. People often think power means having the ability to control others, she said. But real power is having the ability to make others feel valued. Adrian remembered those words because they described everything Olivia had shown him. She had no title. She had no position of influence. Yet she had changed the way he viewed the world. As the evening ended, Adrian looked at Olivia and realized something important. The woman he first noticed because of one simple act of kindness had become someone who reminded him of the person he wanted to be. And for the first time in many years, the Mafia Boss was no longer focused on protecting his image. He was focused on protecting something much more meaningful, the connections that made life worth living. Adrian Whitmore had spent most of his life understanding the power of reputation. A name could open doors, create opportunities, and make people pay attention before a single word was spoken. But recently, he had discovered something unexpected. A reputation could also become a wall that separated a person from the world around them. Olivia Bennett had never been impressed by the name Whitmore. She respected Adrian, but she never allowed his position to change the way she treated him. That was what made their connection different. She did not see a powerful man who needed to be admired. She saw someone who was learning how to be understood. As Adrian continued to change, the people closest to him began noticing. His 4 bodyguards, who had worked beside him for years, saw the difference more clearly than anyone. They had watched countless people approach Adrian with hidden intentions, but Olivia was different from everyone they had encountered before. She was the first person who had entered his world without wanting anything from it. One evening, Adrian's team gathered at his office after a long day. The conversation was quieter than usual because everyone had noticed the changes in their leader. One of the bodyguards mentioned how unusual it was to see Adrian spend time simply talking with someone. Before Olivia, Adrian's schedule had been built around responsibilities and decisions. Now, he made time for conversations, family, and moments that had nothing to do with business. The change was subtle, but it was real. Meanwhile, Olivia was experiencing a change of her own. She had always believed that staying humble meant staying unnoticed. She was comfortable being the person behind the scenes, the person who helped others without expecting recognition. But Adrian and Eleanor helped her understand that humility did not mean making herself smaller. It meant knowing her value without needing to prove it. One afternoon, Eleanor invited Olivia to a charity event hosted by the Whitmore family. Olivia felt uncertain at first. She knew the room would be filled with people from a world very different from her own. She was used to serving coffee and having simple conversations. She was not used to being surrounded by wealthy guests who carefully observed every detail. When Olivia arrived, she immediately felt the difference. The room was elegant, the conversations were polished, and everyone seemed aware of their place. Some guests recognized Adrian's connection to her and became curious. Others quietly wondered how someone with such a simple background had become important to the Whitmore family. Olivia noticed the attention, but she remained calm. She did not try to impress anyone. She simply greeted people with the same kindness she always showed. Adrian watched from across the room and felt proud. The woman beside him did not need his protection because she knew her own worth. She did not need to change who she was to belong in a different environment. During the event, one guest asked Olivia how she managed to become close to the Whitmore family. Before Olivia could answer, Adrian spoke. Because she reminded us what matters. The room became quiet. His words were simple, but everyone understood their meaning. Adrian Whitmore, a man known for influence and control, was openly recognizing the value of someone who had no interest in either. That moment changed the way people looked at Olivia. She was no longer seen as someone who entered Adrian's world by chance. She was seen as someone whose character earned her place there. And Adrian realized that true respect was never created by demanding attention. It was created by giving people a reason to remember your kindness. The evening of the charity event became a moment that many people in Adrian Whitmore's world would remember. Not because of a grand announcement or a display of influence, but because of something much simpler. Everyone in the room witnessed a powerful man recognize the value of someone who had never asked for attention. Olivia Bennet stood among people who measured success through wealth, connections, and reputation, yet she remained exactly the same person she had always been. She listened carefully, spoke kindly, and treated every person with the same respect. Adrian noticed that quality more than anyone else. He had spent years surrounded by people who changed their behavior depending on who stood in front of them. But Olivia never changed. She did not become more confident because important people noticed her. She did not become less confident because some people questioned why she belonged there. She carried herself with the same quiet strength that had first caught Eleanor Whitmore's attention. After the event, Adrian and Olivia walked through the quiet gardens outside the venue. The city lights reflected in the distance, creating a peaceful moment away from the expectations of everyone around them. Adrian looked thoughtful. "You handled that room better than most people I know," he said. Olivia smiled. "I just remembered that everyone there is still a person." Adrian looked at her because that sentence represented everything she had shown him since they met. She had a way of making complicated things feel simple. She reminded him that behind every title, every achievement, and every reputation was a human being with emotions and experiences. The following week, Adrian's 4 bodyguards noticed another change. Before Olivia entered his life, Adrian rarely spoke about personal matters. His conversations were focused on responsibilities and decisions. Now, he asked questions about other people's lives. He remembered names. He showed appreciation more openly. The men who had worked beside him for years understood that this was not a temporary change. Something deeper had happened. Olivia had not changed Adrian by trying to control him. She had changed him by showing him another way to see the world. Meanwhile, Olivia began receiving invitations to spend more time with Eleanor. The older woman enjoyed their conversations because Olivia reminded her of a time when people connected without thinking about status. Eleanor also noticed something important. Olivia was learning to accept that her kindness had value. For years, she believed helping others was simply something anyone could do. But Eleanor explained that compassion was a strength, especially in a world where many people forgot to show it. One afternoon, Eleanor shared a story from Adrian's childhood. She explained that he had always been protective and responsible, but he carried the weight of expectations from a young age. "He learned how to be strong," Eleanor said, "but you reminded him how to be gentle." Olivia listened quietly because she never intended to change Adrian. She only wanted him to remember the parts of himself that were still there. As the days passed, people around Adrian began seeing Olivia differently. She was no longer viewed as someone from outside his world. She became someone whose presence brought balance to it. Even those who had once questioned her place began to understand why Adrian respected her. She did not earn that respect through wealth or status. She earned it through consistency, honesty, and compassion. One evening, Adrian stood with his 4 bodyguards outside the cafe where everything began. He looked through the window and saw Olivia laughing with customers, creating the same warmth that had first changed his mother's day. He realized the greatest influence in his life had come from someone who never tried to influence anyone at all. And in that quiet moment, Adrian Whitmore understood that the person who had entered his world with nothing to prove had given him something he could never have found through power alone. Months after Olivia Bennet first stepped into the life of the Whitmore family, the people around Adrian noticed something they never expected. The man who once believed that strength meant standing alone had discovered the importance of allowing others to stand beside him. Adrian Whitmore was still respected throughout the city. His name still carried influence, and his responsibilities had not disappeared. But the difference was in the way he carried them. He no longer measured his success only by what he could achieve. He began measuring it by the people he could support and the lives he could improve. Olivia had never asked him to become someone else. She had simply reminded him of the person he had always been beneath the expectations and the reputation. The small cafe where they first met remained one of Adrian's favorite places. To everyone else, it was just a neighborhood cafe with warm lights, simple tables, and familiar faces. But to Adrian, it represented the beginning of a new understanding. It was where he met someone who saw him without a title attached to his name. One morning, Adrian visited the cafe and found Olivia serving customers with the same kindness she had shown from the very beginning. She noticed him and smiled. "You are early today," she said. Adrian looked around the room. "I think I finally understand why you like this place." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Why?" He smiled softly. "Because nobody here cares about what someone owns or what someone represents. They care about who they are talking to." Olivia nodded because that was exactly what she had believed all along. Over time, the relationship between Adrian and Olivia became something people around them respected. Not because of status or appearances, but because of the way they brought out the best in each other. Eleanor Whitmore watched their connection with happiness because she knew her son had found something rare. He had found someone who could see beyond the image everyone else recognized. The four bodyguards who had once entered Olivia's cafe as strangers became some of her strongest supporters. They remembered the first day they met her and how different she was from everyone else they had encountered around the Whitmore family. She had not been impressed by power. She had not been intimidated by reputation. She had simply been kind. One evening, Adrian and Olivia returned to the place where their story began. The cafe was quiet, with only a few customers enjoying their evening drinks. Adrian looked around and remembered the day his world began to change. He remembered how one small act of kindness from someone he did not know had affected his entire family. "Do you ever think about that first day?" Adrian asked. Olivia smiled. "Sometimes, but I still think I only did what anyone should do." Adrian looked at her and understood that was exactly why she was unforgettable. She never considered kindness a way to gain attention. She never expected recognition. She simply believed people deserved care and respect. That belief had changed the way Adrian viewed power, success, and himself. The world would continue to know Adrian Whitmore as a powerful man. But those closest to him knew something more important. They knew he had become a better man because someone showed him that true strength was not about being above others. It was about remembering that every person mattered. And that day, everyone around them remembered what dignity truly looked like.